Imagine learning in a small group, intimate setting while exploring unique European locations. EU Vet CE Experiences offers race approved CE seminars that combine half day lectures with time to relax and discover captivating cultures. The CE sessions are delivered in English, allowing you to elevate your career while vacationing with loved ones. Experience the perfect blend of learning and luxury at EU Vet CE Experiences interactive seminars in hand picked European destinations. Elevate your knowledge and recharge simultaneously. Visit euveterinaryce.com to learn more.
Why do we do things this way? Because that's how we've always done it. Well, that answer might be true. That's not the best way to run a hospital or even your career. Whether there is need for change or not, it's about being curious and leaning into possibilities. This is a huge part of Dr. Lauren Jones's career story. Because of her belief that there is opportunity for good change, Dr. Jones knew early on that she was interested in owning her own veterinary practice. So she looked for a perfect job opportunity to set her up for success. And we talk about some key characteristics on how to set yourself up for success in veterinary medicine, including how to prepare yourself for possible change. Change of all shapes and sizes. And change is how we grow as individuals and as a profession. So knowing how to do change well is crucial, especially when we face a change that is tied to our very identity. So let's get to the conversation with Dr. Lauren Jones. When did you know you wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
So I think I have a pretty traditional story. I've wanted to be a vet since I was little. I had horses growing up. Two of them, my first horse, his name was the Robbie. He was an Arabian and he was my heart. We had gotten him, he had an injury to his eye. So he didn't have an enucleation, but he couldn't see out of it. We got him a little bit cheaper because of that. I probably wouldn't have gotten him otherwise. But I was in love with my horses, and I had barn cats and dogs, and that is really where it started. And having my equine vet come out and show me all of the things that she would, kind of starting to explain it, and really planted that seed for me. And from there, it grew. So I was probably around, 10 or 12 when I first got my horses. But that love of my animals and, wild animals, and I lived in Michigan at the time. So I'm carrying buckets in the middle of winter, trucking through snow to get water to the barn because it didn't have running water out there. But really just that passion started then and ignited it. And I wanted to do more for my pets, wanted to give them a voice that, that it's really a beautiful thing for us as vets to be able to talk to them without words and figure out, the puzzle of what's going on with them. So that's really where it started, was, in the cold winters of Michigan, bringing water to my horses.
Nice. Now, since you had such an equine start,
yeah.
When you went into vet school at the University of Pennsylvania, did you think you might do equine medicine? And how was vet school? Did that change?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and kind of a silly answer. I had, when I was in vet school, I did not have horses at the time. Lots of dogs, cats, there's always multiple little furry things running around. But I had somebody in vet school say, the biggest recommendation they could give was, if you love horses and you want to have horses in your life, don't be a horse vet. And that stuck with me, that, and I knew I wanted to. My daughter and I both ride out here, and there's a lot more that we can do with small animals, and, it's a comfortable thing as well. I didn't want to be out in the elements, and I wanted to enjoy my horses. And I think I was very scared to go into large animal and then not have that joy and that passion at home too. So that definitely changed. And I went to school at Penn, and New Bolton is a tough go. I had some of my best moments in vet school at New Bolton Center, and some of the hardest too. And some of them really that also shaped my career. And I could think to myself, and I'll even to this day go, man, that was kind of a rough experience, and I wish that could have gone differently for me. But so it was small animal from the beginning, knowing that I wanted to have hobbies in horses and equine. And I knew from the start, even as a young kid, I wanted to own my own hospital. I knew I wanted to be my own boss. So I tried to take as many business courses that I could, which in, 2006, 2010, there weren't a ton. There was really one kind of program that we could do. Well, I think that's gotten better. It's definitely something that I think school can expand on. Yeah. So I knew from the start, I wanted to own and be my own boss and try to create a good space for my coworkers, other vet and staff members.
Yeah. wanted to go back to something you said, because one of the reasons why I love asking people about their vet school experience is that I do believe that there are some moments in vet school that really help us understand who we are and some of the things that we want in our career. And so you said that there were some of the best moments, there's some of the most challenging, and there were some that really defined what you want to do for your career. So do you mind elaborating on that, especially the one that defined what you would want in your career?
Yeah. So it was 2010. I was a fourth year student in large animal surgery, sitting in rounds. And so I'm out at New Bolton Center, in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. And I will not name the surgeon, but he was a fairly prominent equine surgeon. And we were sitting around, and of course, there's, the questions drilling us on the surgeries and all of that. But then we kind of went down a rabbit hole, and he was asking us about, name the providences in Canada, and then continued to kind of berate us for those of us who didn't know, or if we couldn't come up with all of them. And I remember thinking at that time, I understand that we need to be well-rounded as vets and humans. I get that. But this interaction was so belittling, and this surgeon had a reputation, so I kind of knew it going in, had a reputation of teaching out of fear and really humiliating the students. And that's not uncommon. But I remember sitting in that round and knowing that I just had to sit there and take it and be embarrassed that I didn't know much about Canada, and thinking, this isn't the way to do it. This isn't how I want to lead. And I knew I wanted to be an owner at that point, and just thought, there's so much more that we can do here. And I want to break that cycle of horrible mentors and horrible bosses. And there's somewhere along the way, I feel like we've been kind of conditioned to, it's going to suck with this, I'm going to be unhappy, and that's okay. That's what this part of the job is. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think we need to have these hazing rituals of making, new and upcoming vets feel unworthy. We have enough imposter syndrome. I had it in high school, in undergrad, in college, especially as a baby vet. And even now, even today, walking in here, I have imposter syndrome. There's small pieces of that. And I think it gets better with experience. But it really stuck with me sitting there in those rounds and just thinking, this isn't the way I want to do it. This isn't the way I want to see vet med go. We can support each other, and we can normalize not knowing things without feeling bad about it, and lean on each other. That was a really pivotal moment for me, what not to do.
We can learn a lot from the what not to do as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I'm glad that was the lesson you took away instead of taking it personally. Because why is he asking about Canada? I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. What is that relevant? So, of all the questions to get wrong, good for you, because I bet that one did not come up on your board of camp.
It did not. It wasn't on the Netflix.
So, oh, wow. What a moment. And so, great that you were pretty confident that you wanted to have a big leadership part going into being a veterinarian and owning your own practice. There's a lot of conversation about that. It's like, do people really want to own practices? And I think we're kind of in an interesting transition right now. But with that mindset going into your first practice, was there something you looked for in that first practice that would kind of help you achieve that goal?
So I was very, very lucky with my first practice. So I graduated 2010, and then my very first job was, I knew I wanted to go into canine reproduction. That's kind of where my heart was. So I did a lot of work in that in vet school, learning with the genetics department. And there was a hospital very close to where my family is and where I wanted to settle down. So I had reached out to them. They were happened to be hiring at that point. And so from day one, I went in and said, hey, this is where my heart is. And it's pretty unusual. Not a lot of people like canine reproduction, doing it the right way. But that hospital was well known, up and down, the East Coast. We were one of the premier canine repro places. So I was really lucky that I stepped into that. And the owners at the time knew that they were looking to get out within 5 to 10 years. And so they were able to mentor me from day one. And then as it got close, at first, obviously, I'm a baby vet. So I was just focusing on medicine at first. But starting like 2014 or so, then we started saying, hey, we're ready to do this. Are you ready still? And then starting that process of owning. It was a lot of luck in that I got to do something that I loved, that I was good at, and that there was a need for, in that location. And then I owned that first hospital in 2015. 2 years later, 2017, I got a notification that there was another practice in my area. And so I signed the NDA, and it came back as the hospital that I did all of my pre-vet work. So I've known these people since, I don't know, the 90s, basically. I was a kennel assistant. They were my vet, my family's vets. And so we said, wow, what is, so it was kind of a crazy full circle where my second hospital is this place that I started. And then, walking in and as the new owner and then saying, man, I remember Lauren, back in the kennel days. And I remember calling the vet because the dog had a swollen eye. And that was the first time I learned about abscesses can affect the eyes. It was a really cool, and that's the hospital that I still own today. Is that second one. I've since sold the first one.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, as someone who is coming in day one out of vet school, first time job, and someone is with that mind going to help mentor you in being a practice owner. There's a lot that goes into that. I'm sure everything from interpersonal relationships to the financial aspect of it, to supply, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I hate that this is one of the first things I think about is how does a person who's been a vet for 4 to 5 years financially be able to come into practice? Because I think that's some things that people are concerned about, is especially with loans and all sorts of things, that even if people wanted to own a practice, it can be financially very challenging. So do you mind sharing a little bit of some of the best ways that they prepared you for that? And especially on the financial piece, how were you comfortable? Like, how did that all go?
Oh, I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. And I was lucky. My husband comes from a corporate finance background. So I was able to lean on him. But when I tell people who are looking at taking over a practice or a startup, is just to find those experts that you trust for everything, financial, but also HR and legal and all of that, because I know what I know, but that's science, that med. And I need to lean on it and learn from them, but also you need those people in your life. I was fortunate that the previous owners sold it to me and they were the bank. So I didn't have to go out and get a loan, and that made it a lot easier for us to do that. And then, just paying them back, setting up a schedule and kind of approaching it that way. But it was terrifying. I remember the very first, and it was something I didn't think about until after we had already closed, the first payroll. Yeah, I don't have anything sitting in my bank account, my business bank account, and my savings, my personal. And after we closed, that first weekend was payroll, and we went, oh boy, can we make it? Like that was this terrifying moment of looking at the bank account starting at zero. And we knew we had backups. We knew we could pull from reserves, but just that moment of, it didn't occur to me that like, I wasn't going to have that kind of cushion right away. And that, they're now lives counting on me to make sure that they get their paycheck on time, accurate. So it is terrifying. And part of when I mentor people now or talk to them about businesses, and it's saying it's okay to be terrified, that these are okay, normal emotions, and trying to normalize that. And now what? Now what do we do? Yes, it's terrifying. It's scary. But leaning on the silly saying, it takes a village. But it does. It really does. Finding the people who you can trust and having that faith that it's going to be okay. And not that it's going to be rosy all the time, not going to be happy all the time, and we're going to fail. But learning from those mistakes and trying to be as prepared as you can, I guess.
Sure. Experience starts to play into it. And again, the other thing about what inspired you to do ownership and leadership was maybe the what not to do that you saw. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like culture was a big part of some of your goals as well. So both from the taking in the mentorship of it as a baby vet, but then as you started to step in as the leader, what were some of the things that you learned and saw that worked really well in creating the culture that you wanted?
We would like to thank our sponsor, VetBadger, the all-in-one practice management software that puts relationships first. Created by working veterinary parents, VetBadger provides all the communication, team workflow, and medical management tools you need to run an efficient practice and get home to the relationships that matter most. In support of parents in vet med, Vet Badger will be offering a signed copy of the book Pregnancy and Postpartum Considerations for the Veterinary Team by Emily Singler to everyone who registers for a demo between Mother's Day, May 12th, and Father's Day, June 16th. To register, visit vetbadger.com and find the link in the description below.
That's a great question. And culture is so big for me. And we really sat down and thought about what are the important values to us? What are our values as a company, as owners? And from day one, we wanted to we were family first. I think it is so, I'll back up. I know how much there's so much burnout and unhappiness, depression in our business. And I really wanted to fight that from day one and be a place where people felt safe, they feel heard, acknowledged, and also that they, work-life balance, again, another buzzword, but, what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to me? And really breaking that down. And so we said, one of our primary values, we're family first. And that means if you need to go you want to see your kid in a Halloween parade, that we're going to allow that time, whether that's holding back of some appointments or, letting you go early or go on your lunch break. We're family first. Your kid's sick, go. You want to be on vacation, take vacation with your kid. And everything that we do, we would approach it we would ask ourselves a question and we would say, what is the upside to us as business owners and what's best for our employees and our staff? And 9 times out of 10, we're going to lean on making a decision to be most helpful to our staff. That might sometimes mean that I'm not going to make as much money. Obviously, we have to be profitable. And so it's balancing that. I have to keep the lights on. I still have to make a profit. But I'm not going to be pushing for 20, 25% profit if that means I can make my staff's life a little bit better. And trying to help them understand with some of the homework that I would give them, or even today when I talk to people, sit down and write a list of what makes you happy. And look at it and say, okay, well, and for me, I love horseback riding. I love kayaking, love going off road. I love spending time with my family, movie night. And then saying, am I doing all of those things? Am I doing the things that I love enough? And of course, in that list is my love for veterinary medicine and loving being a vet and loving animals. But sometimes that gets skewed, right? And so I really kind of would push my staff and, everyone involved in my businesses that it's not about work first. My goal is getting you home and getting you to the things that you love. Of course, we're going to stay late. We're going to get called in. All of those things are going to happen. But when it doesn't, I really focus on getting them back to their whys, then why they're happy. And a happy person at home is going to be a better employee, a happier employee, and creating an environment that's not toxic. That was really our goal and kind of our North Star is taking care of our staff.
And I love how often you keep saying our. So who was with you in that leadership role that you leaned on? Because leadership can also be a lonely place too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
who was your support?
My husband primarily owns the business with us. He has another job, but he handles a lot of like I mentioned earlier, the finances, but just also he can, we kind of use each other as a compass. It's great sometimes because he's not a vet. So I can say, hey, bounce ideas off him from a non-vet perspective. But there are times where I'm like, but he doesn't always get it. And he shouldn't. If you're not a vet or a vet tech or, CSR, you don't understand all of the nuances in a veterinary hospital. So he was the primary one. But then I also have, medical directors at each hospital that, I would lean on too. But primarily when I was using the word "our," it's leaning on my husband. You're absolutely right. It can be lonely at the top, and learning to take that on and having thicker skin, even though I know I'm trying to do best and do right by my staff, I'm going to make people mad. They're going to be upset because that is, kind of the culture. And so it's balancing that and not letting them see the tears. And while you're getting that thickened skin, really leaning on, I leaned on my husband, all of the frustrations and the fears and are we going to make payrolls and all of that. It's so crucial to have that person.
It is, because you talked about this too. You really wanted to make your employees happy, but there's some business decisions where there's no way you can make everybody in life happy. It's just not going to happen. So balancing all of that is a lot. And like I said, a lot of times with the leadership, you don't have a whole lot of people that you can talk to about it, or, whether it's just venting or actually asking for advice. And I think it's great that you get both, maybe an outside perspective versus somebody who knows it a little bit better. But
Yeah.
all of those can be very helpful. And no matter where you are, I think finding that support system is very crucial to overall well-being. And so I'm glad that your husband, I have a similar relationship, not that my husband and I work together anymore, but we do a lot of entrepreneurial things together, and we can bounce things off of each other from very different perspectives. He's an IT engineer, so thinks very differently. So it can be nice to have someone to bounce off and cares about you too, right? Even if they don't get it, you know that they care about you and they're trying.
Exactly. And sometimes that's all you need is, and one of the biggest things I've learned to say, whether it's, my husband's venting to me, I'm venting to my husband, we've learned to say, okay, are you looking for solutions right now? Or are you looking to, I need to know, how am I showing up for you right now? What do you need? And I think that is huge. One, to be able to reflect personally and go, what do I need right now? Yeah, just let me complain for a minute. Or no, I'm really struggling with this problem and I want help and to find the solution. So, I think that was one of the biggest phrases that I love. And it's not, it's original that's out there, but it really rings true for me. What am I looking for right now?
Yeah. And you started to mention, or you mentioned this, that, you ended up selling one practice and you currently own one, but there's a big kind of opportunity pivot in your life because, as you said, your husband had a different job. And I think he got a new job opportunity and you had a very big move. So you mind sharing that move and kind of all the things that you had to go through?
Yeah. I think this has also been a very, very pivotal moment for us. And it was right after COVID. So we sold my first hospital in March of 2020. A week later, that's when the world shut down. So it was kind of crazy timing. But my first hospital was the one that I practiced more of the reproduction. I was a primary vet there and not so much of the second one. So my husband got a job in Phoenix. So I'll back up my hospital as outside of Philadelphia. My husband got a job in the Phoenix, Arizona area. So we sat down and, okay, well, what do we want to do with it? Lots and lots of discussion, talking about burnout and being unhappy. I was there. It's something that we feel shame and guilt when we talk about it, but it's so important for me to normalize that and to let people know that these are normal feelings. So I was burnout. I, had been working so much, being on call so much at that first hospital. And I didn't want to be in GP anymore. And that felt shameful. And it felt, going back to my story about growing up and having all of this love and wanting to be the voice and being so sad and kind of mad at myself that I didn't want that anymore. But, I also am I love change. I love embracing change and good challenge. I don't want to be stagnant. I don't want to be doing the same thing all the time. So we looked at it as an opportunity for personal growth, as well as finding my happiness again, because I was miserable, to be honest, and sad, and all of the things that we talk about in vet med with passion fatigue, cyberbullying, all of that goes into burnout. So this was huge, and we were so excited to chase life. And so we decided kind of, okay, yeah, we're doing it. So we picked up, we have 2 kids, and, they moved to Arizona with us, and sat my staff down and said, hey, I'm not selling, because they're all terrified. It was during the time where corporate is buying practices left and right. And of course, that's a reasonable fear that when the owner picks up and moves across the country, that they're not going to keep it. So I've tried to be very transparent with my staff and said, I'm not going to own it forever. No one will, that's life, but it's not in my 5 or 10 year plan right now. And you guys will be the first ones when that happens. I want to be transparent with them and say, okay, I'm starting to think about selling. But I think there's a universe where this works, because I wasn't a primary veterinarian in that practice. They are still practicing the medicine. I'm managing remotely. I go in, used to be about every month. As my kids are getting older, that's getting more difficult. At least once a quarter, I go back. I can really have FaceTime with my staff. Sometimes I will jump in and see some appointments if we get backed up or, somebody's off, that type of thing. But this has been so pivotal in my career, because I have been able to find my joys again. And that looks like, so my hospital is in Philadelphia. I'm 3 hours behind them. They close for the day at 5:30. It's 2:30 my time, and I have this extra time. So meanwhile, the software that we use is Shepherd. I've been a user of Shepherd for 6 years, so I really know the team well. I know the culture well. It really aligns with my values and my goals. And so they approached me and said, hey, we really could use some help, vet-to-vet consultation. And so I jumped into that role about 2 years ago. So I have my practice outside of Philadelphia, and now I do some consulting work, and now really trying to get into more speaking engagements. I've done from continuing education, articles, webinars, trying to get my feet wet there. And I'm loving finding this ability to use my degree and to use my knowledge in a very different way. One of my goals, is fighting burnout. I don't feel that way anymore, but we can't all leave the industry, right? Like, we still need somebody. My kittens that you see running around, I still need to take them somewhere out here, and we can't all leave. So I've really kind of taken it on through Shepherd and the speaking engagements that I'm doing to try to talk to people and normalize these feelings and normalize, and also helping them figure out how to get back to their whys and their passions without leaving vet med. And I think it's possible and doable, but it's starting by talking about it and acknowledging the struggles that we faced and open conversations about them.
And I also feel that if something is not going the way we like it, usually means we have to change something. And it's something that you mentioned, that you love change. And I love that you said if you could ban a statement, it was because that's how we've always done it.
Yes.
So I love for you to talk more about that, because I think it is something that we need to embrace and understand that even though change can be scary. I mean, you moved to the other side of the country, like you said, a 3-hour time difference.
Yeah.
And when we talked earlier, your mindset was, well, let's try it. The worst thing is if it doesn't work, we do something different.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of my favorite phrases to challenge people. And I've tried to have a very open communication, talking to my staff. And also, that wisdom applies everywhere, right? To my husband, to my kids, to my friends, everywhere. Trying to kind of go back to the basic question, and why are we doing it this way? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's not a judgment call, but just why. And I ban saying, like, don't ever tell me, because the way we've always done it. That just, it irks me. I want to challenge the challenge of, well, why though? Is it because this is the best way to do this particular task? And if so, that's great. But why don't we challenge that and think, well, what if we did it this way? And I think we learn so much more from the failures than the successes. Obviously, we want to be more successful than not, but I think that flipping that culture change and just, nope, this is the way it's always been done. And saying, okay, well, maybe we continue doing it that way. I don't know, but let's have an open conversation and try this out. And I will say, I think I am in the minority of people in at least vet med that love change. I really thrive on it. And I tried, I really, try to have my staff embrace that too, that it's okay, and switch it up. And that it was one of my greatest joys as an owner when people would come back to me and go, I thought you were crazy and I didn't want to do this, but man, you were right. This is fantastic. Thank you for pushing me. And, and it's not about getting accolades, but I love seeing that change in my staff as well, and having the wheels start turning and having them think about things differently to make things better for themselves, but also the clients. And ultimately what we're here for is patient care. And if we can do those things and have slight tweaks and challenge the way that we've always done them, then the goal is that we end up, with better pet care, and that our patients are really the winners. That's been my experience throughout, all of these little things that we've tried to change.
And it doesn't have to be drastic changes, right?
No.
It doesn't have to be across the country moves. Some of these changes and I love the idea of just having a discussion about it. It's just like checking in and saying, how are things going? Are there other ways of doing it? Even if the answer is, nope, we've talked about this, but I still think what we're doing seems to be working best right now. That's fine. But just entertaining the ideas and getting people thinking that way is, I think, really important, because there will be a time when it's like, oh, that is a good idea. Maybe that would be better. Let's try that. And we also live in a time where change is constant, whether it's technology or medical innovations, from treatments, diagnostics. And so as scientists and doctors, we should be used to that, or we should be excited to know if something is new that better helps our patient, better helps our clients. And so it is something that I think, though, that it takes constant conversation about it and making it normal to think about what are the options, even if you do go back to what you do in the beginning. Just sometimes in my opinion, that creative mindset where you're just thinking about the options. If you think about it, your differential list, just go, what are some options? With it? And what makes sense for us, our clients, and our patients.
Absolutely. And you said it so well. It doesn't have to be big. These changes, it doesn't have to be groundbreaking. It can be very small. It can be, I tell my staff, just do one thing a little bit differently during your day. Set a timer on one of the Alexas or your phone to go take a pee break. How many of us have been, working all day and we just don't do that? And so it's like those little things that can make your life so much better. Oh, I actually got to use the restroom today. I got a 5-minute walk in. Even, again, like you said, that those small things can really make a big difference. And eventually you work up to bigger changes like moving across, but it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. I recently was talking with someone just about those little changes that you can make in the hospital that just make it a little bit more comfortable for everybody. And one example that we didn't get a chance to say on the recorded podcast, but was the front desk people had to come back and constantly interrupt all the doctors. And so what they decided to do was there was a set of red headphones that when you put on those headphones for 10 minutes, it meant unless something was dying, that people needed to leave you alone. So you could have that concentrated time to get whatever task you needed done instead of being constantly interrupted. Yeah. And so implementing something little like that, 10 minutes of a signal that I need to focus, think about how impactful that could be just across the board. And those little things start to compound. And by the end, it may be big, but like you said, sometimes there's opportunities to do a big change, even like the dreaded changing medical software or something like that.
Yes.
Definitely sends everybody nerve-wracking. And when I was an intern, so baby doctor internship, and they went from paper to electronic medical records, it was a lot of work. But by the end, you're like, okay, I'm starting to see that this can be helpful. So sometimes it is, again, having the conversation, starting the little things like that make the big changes a little bit easier, because they're like, okay, we've done something kind of like this. We'll be okay.
Exactly. And it's having faith in your team, but also having curiosity in the team, right? And letting them be part of that conversation. It's not, I don't want to be a dictator as an owner. I want to open that conversation and hear, what are your pain points throughout the day? They might be different than mine. I might assume that they're the same pain point mine, but that might not be, especially different roles, So opening that up and saying, and hearing them out, and then hearing, what they want to do, what changes they propose, and letting them have some ownership of that and not shooting it all down. And understanding, especially like you said, when in the bigger changes, like going from paper record to electronic medical record, to be upfront and go, there are going to be some days that are not going to be fun, team, especially in the beginning, but we need to, trust the process, to put a little Philly 76ers reference in there, to trust the process and lean on each other, and don't be angry and upset. Let's talk about it. And if this new system isn't working in the way that you want, well, let's talk about it and figure out a different workflow. And just always having that curiosity in the team, asking them where they're at in their careers, where they want to go, how can we help you do that, and helping them along that process and having that trust in.
Yeah. And I loved the comment about giving them ownership of it, letting them give the ideas, because usually they are much more ready to adopt it and do it. So allowing them that opportunity, again, to participate in the conversation around the ideas around change makes it a lot easier to get people behind it, because it's their idea. So.
Yes. One of the most powerful things that when I was, before I owned the practices, and it's something that I've tried to continue, the most powerful, very simple phrase though, is, what do you think? So anytime somebody has a problem, they come to me. Of course, I might have ideas, but I'm from Philly, right? I can talk fast. We want to just kind of jump in and get our thoughts out there. But I try to take a step back and go, okay, I hear you. I hear your problem. I've got some ideas, but what do you think first? I want to hear what your thoughts are. And I think it is so powerful. And I loved hearing it as an associate vet. And I hope that the team members or my kids or my husband, that again, going back to them, they have some ownership in that idea and more buy-in, and that we can all really just kind of be on the same team and, rowing in the same direction.
Yes, exactly. Well, you talked about right now you're trying to get more into writing. I saw that you started writing back in 2021 for Pet MD, which is really neat. And then trying to do more speaking and do CE events. It may be some of the things we've already talked about, but are there certain topics that you really enjoy talking about or writing about?
So this is one that really just hits home for me, is talking about burnout and normalizing the depression and unhappiness in our careers. Because like I said, I mentioned earlier, it's at some point we just kind of all agreed that this is okay to feel this way in vet med. And, so I like to challenge that, to push back. So that's one of the biggest things. And not that I do everything right, but again, just to normalize it and to have that empathy of, it doesn't have to be, again, it's, going back to the mentors and the horrible bosses and hazing people, because this is the way I was taught. And so you need to, go through it too. And you got to learn the ropes and all of those horrible things that we do to, the younger generation, and fighting that and saying, no, that it doesn't have to be this way. We can teach them and encourage them and support them and guide them in vet med. And honestly, I think that makes us better humans and makes us better vets too. That's one of just a passion that I have, and I'll continue doing a lot of that stuff. Love to work with organizations like NAMV, Not One More Vet. That's my sweet spot. But also, I think I have a lot of, from practice ownership, I've purchased 2 hospitals, sold 1, and I've done this all while having children and young kids too. So I'm sure you're familiar with the DVM mom group on Facebook, which is, like 20,000 strong. Yes. I love that group. And I think some of the other topics that I'm excited to get into as I transition my role is how to do this with a family and it ties back in. So, finding your why and your joy, because I really think that you can have a family and be active in your family and be a fantastic vet. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And so often it feels that way. So kind of using my experience, and obviously not everyone can pick up and move like I did. But when I mentioned in 2017, getting that email about the practice that ended up being the one that I used to work for, my son was, a month old at that point. And I was, feeding him when I got this email. And I remember just thinking, are we crazy for doing this? I've got a newborn at home and I have one practice and I'm going to take on another. But sometimes, again, that's kind of where I told myself, all right, let's go. Let's see where this goes. One of the other North Star phrases that my husband and I use is to see it to its natural conclusion. And so we said, okay, let's start the process. So we signed the NDA, looked at the financials, talked to the current owner who used to be my old employer. And we just, at every point, maybe there was a roadblock and we'd go, okay, well, is this a natural conclusion? No. Okay, we'll keep going. And then that ended with me owning the practice and taking over and going from there. So, but it's a juggle, that juggling work-life balance as well as family, pet, and my own personal hobbies. Too often we go to the shadows, especially with kids. But I think those are the, prioritizing things. A lot of the things with the vet moms are other topics that I am looking forward to writing about. Pet MD is great. I love writing for them and creating really good content for clients, easy to read. The goal is to talk to clients about conditions, but I don't have ownership of topics. They say, hey, we need these articles written. I love doing it, but I'm really looking forward to the stuff that I can control more, talking about leaning on my personal life and what I've learned. And hopefully that resonates with other people.
And that's a big topic right now that, we're focusing on at Vet Life Reimagined, around being a parent and doing all of these things, because I think that a lot of the people who are attracted to this industry are extremely passionate about the industry. At the same time, we're still human beings first. We still have interests that may not be directly related, or family that we want to be a part of. I like that you talked about having your staff write down the things that make them happy and revisiting that and making sure that they're still doing those things. And so if you want to add a little bit more on maybe advice for other parents or maybe soon to be parents that feel this way, it's like, I love doing my work, but I do know that I have this family that I also adore. I want to make sure that I can be part of this. I think we're trying to get away from that work-life balance, right? That not the quite right description of what we're trying to do. But
Yes.
yeah, what are some of your top tips that you think has allowed you to make sure that you are being fulfilled in all the areas?
It starts with that list and like you said, revisiting it, but it's also looking at it and then comparing it to your current work situation. What is the culture and is it in alignment with where I'm at? And does that mean, do I want to look for another job? Do I want to talk to my employer and say, I need more time on Wednesdays, I need to get done earlier? And challenging, well, this is just the way it's always been. You work on Wednesdays. No, I really want to get off because that's when my daughter goes horseback riding and I want to be there for her, or whatever the case is. So I think it's really aligning your culture and values, and that changes too. I am a different person when I graduated and what I needed and what I was looking for versus who I am now and what I need out of my career and the businesses that I work for. So I think that's a constant reflection of where you're at and continuing to talk to people. And if the answer is no all the time from your employers, then maybe that's not the best fit for you. And sometimes we need to see that. And as much as that stinks, that might be the next step of, hey, this isn't a good fit anymore. And that's okay, right? Like it's okay to acknowledge that. Yeah. So that's the biggest one for me, is just to continually reevaluate what makes you happy, but also so your whys, but also your why nots. What doesn't fill your bucket anymore and what doesn't bring you that happiness? Because sometimes if we can identify that, now we can't get rid of all of it, right? Like I'd love to say, I want to get, it's my why nots or the aggressive dog. Well, we all know we're not going to be able to get rid of the aggressive dogs. But maybe it's, I'm really unhappy with the amount of aggressive dogs we're seeing and I want to do something about it. Maybe that's finding, getting fear-free certification and turning that into a positive, so you're feeling good about your work. So I really think it's not negative to say the thing that you don't like. It's real. And then that can help you turn why nots into whys.
For me, it felt like we're coming back to the theme of change again, on especially with like new parents or even parents, just as your kids change life stages and they're getting older and doing more activities, like your why and the things that make you happy can change. And I think it sounds kind of crazy that I say this out loud, but it's true that sometimes that makes us uncomfortable too. Understanding that our whys and what makes us happy are changing can actually be uncomfortable to face. And because it requires us often to make sure that we meet those things, to do something different. And again, it doesn't even have to be around children. It could just be you went to a session and realized you loved dog repro. Then what are you going to do now? Like those kinds of things for those that get uncomfortable with that. And again, even for us that like change, sometimes when something kind of challenges what we originally put our identity on or why on, it feels so wrong to change that. But it's not wrong. It's very normal and it's natural. And so I think these are great things to recognize. Find your support system of people who can support you with those changes. Yeah. And I think that's a ticket.
And sitting in that uncomfortable feeling, right? That it doesn't feel good, but so much good can come out of sitting there and feeling those and saying, okay, well, coming out of it with maybe a strategy or a plan. And you hit the nail on the head too. That support system, especially as a parent, and being aligned with that support system on what your goals are, and not being afraid to say, I really do want to try it this way now, and my focus is changing, and not feeling guilty about that, and surrounding your life with the people who are only going to encourage that and go, okay, all right, didn't see that change coming. Okay, cool. Let's pivot and let's try that now. Yeah, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely loved our conversation. I usually wrap up with the final few questions just to get to know you a little bit better as well. So the first question is, do you have anything on your bucket list that you would like to do?
Oh my goodness, so many things, so many bucket lists. I'm a huge dinosaur fanatic. If I could have had like a second career, I would have definitely gone into paleontology, but I'm not sold on the dig sites for permanent job. Bucket lists out here are the going to some sites and seeing, there's a place out here with these dinosaur footprints and different canyons and things. So that's a bucket list for me. Living in Arizona, I've only been here 3 years. So there's so much that I want to do, but really there's so many great, dinosaur related activities that that's a bucket list for me, which is random and silly, but that's one of my joys.
That is so cool. No, I love that. And second question is, do you have and dinosaurs could be part of it, but skill or an interest that maybe not a lot of people know about?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to even when I practiced medicine, I was a small animal practitioner, but I would see a lot of exotic animals because I think there's a need for it in vet med. There's specialists, but not everyone can afford that, or they might be a long distance. They can't go where the specialists are. So I would always, I'll give it a shot. I'll try it with a lot more success than not. So it was a great thing. And I loved the exotics, but that's really, especially moving to Arizona, the reptiles have really become, I always loved, the snakes and the lizards. And especially if some people did see exotics, they're going to see the bunnies and the guinea pigs. Even harder to find people who will see reptiles, especially snakes. So I've leaned in on that. And I am like an avid snake hunter around my house. And all the kids know that I'm looking for snakes, the good snakes, the bad snakes. I've relocated some rattlesnakes here. So that is, I think most people don't know about me, is that I have really become just like, love my snakes, but also active in groups trying to kind of change the bad rap that they get, and that these are wonderful creatures that deserve to live, and fighting the culture of only good snake's a dead snake, and trying to show my friends pictures of my snakes, not, the outside snakes. I don't have any.
Well, that could be very important information for those of us who are not quite that confident with snakes, so that we know who to call to walk us through.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So my side story, my husband, like his phobia is snakes. And he actually told me that if he sees a snake in this house, that I better run because he's going to burn the house down. So I was like, okay. So I guess I hope if there is a snake, I find it because I'm on my own.
That's right. That's right. And you like your house, I'm sure. So
yes, and that would be a lot to overcome. So great skill to have because it's needed for sure.
Thank you. It's fun. It's fun for me. For sure.
And finally, what is something that you are very grateful for?
Oh, I am so grateful for the opportunities that I've had in veterinary medicine, and so grateful that I was able to find my passion again and not become another statistic. That I have the support system and the people in my life who kind of let me do those things and try it out, and to be open to change as well. I am so grateful for where I'm at in my career, that I am not only using my degree, but maybe not in the way that is traditional, or that many people think that's, I'm not a traditional vet, but I'm happy. And I am so, so grateful for that and the opportunities there.
Thank you for listening to the episode. Please check out our detailed show notes for resources from this episode. Don't forget to sign up for the free May giveaway, which is ending soon. It will also have a couple of questions for us to learn more about how we can improve the podcast. Link in the description. I want to thank our generous sponsors for this month, EU Veterinary CE, Vet Badger, and William Tancredi's amazing Substack. Again, check out the show notes to learn more and support those who support the podcast. We will have an exciting blast from the past next week to wrap up our month focus on children and family. So come back next week